Hey guys, so this is the long-awaited comparison between two excellent Sony fixed-length lenses. This is the Sony 28mm versus the Sony 35mm. So let's take a look at both of these lenses up close and get started. And here they are. So the 35mm is on the left, the 28 on the right. My copy of the Sony 35mm is definitely much older than my 28mm. I purchased this a few months ago, or maybe just a month ago. The 35 I've had for a couple of years now. So you'll see some scratches on this, and it's a little beat up from using it all the time. But you can see that the two lenses are pretty close in size. I'd say that the 28mm is a little under a centimeter longer. Front lens element is very unique on the 35. It's kind of a concave lens on the very front, whereas you just have a slightly raised dome glass on the 28, more of a standard lens. Around the back, metal mounts, electronic connections. Both of these lenses support autofocus and all of the features within the Sony a6000 line. The 35mm does have optical Steadyshot, as you can see on the side. The 28mm lens is really a full frame lens. You can see that the back opening is much larger than the 35mm lens. And most full frame cameras from Sony have in-body stabilization, so optical Steadyshot is less important with this 28mm lens. But you can still use full frame Sony lenses on your a6000, a6300, a6500, a5100, and that's why I'm doing this comparison. So let's take a look at some sample photos and video from both of these lenses. So editing this video really late at night, I forgot to mention that all of these shots were taken on the same Sony a6000 camera body. They were all done on a tripod with a 2-second shutter delay, so no handshake involved. And optical Steadyshot was turned off for all of the pictures. So here we go. All right, so here is a portrait of my wife. This is where we will begin. Now I'm gonna keep all of the 28mm photos on the left and all of the 35mm photos on the right, but you can obviously tell that one is wider and then one is cropped in a bit more. So if you ever get confused, that's that. So this first shot was done at 1/500 of a second at f2 ISO 100. And you can tell immediately that the 35 is more of a portrait lens. The 28 is more of a street lens, I would say. You can certainly move in or zoom in with your feet and take close-up shots with the 28mm, but the 35 serves that purpose more. So let's take a look at center sharpness here. And again, both of these are raw files. I did load them so that you guys aren't waiting for my computer to load. Looking at these, sharpness is about the same, I want to say. I don't see much of a difference here. I mean, looking out at the hairs in the background, honestly, it's neck and neck. I can't really tell which one is better. 35 looks nicer here, but the 28 is very, very sharp here. So just to the side. Now, again, this is at f2, so the 1.8 is stopped down a little bit. The 28 is wide open. A bit creamier here just because you're at 35mm instead of 28. So yeah, if I had to pick a favorite out of these two pictures, I would pick the 35, but both are very sharp. I think it's a tie as far as sharpness. Here's the next image, again, another portrait. So let's take a look at center sharpness. So it looks to me that the 35 is a little sharper, but that just might be because it's cropped in a little bit more. I think it's very slight. The 28 is very sharp in this example, so not much nice bokeh there, but when you compare it to the 35, it's just much creamier here. Looking at background again. Creamier bokeh with a 35. This one was shot at settings listed here. Yeah, I would say that there's a slight sharpness advantage in favor of the 35, but again, very, very close. Both excellent lenses, both excellent images. I'd be happy with either one of these. The third picture here is more of a close-up portrait. Again, now these are shot at f2.8, ISO's 100, 1/125. So a little bit more of a fair matchup, I suppose. So let's zoom in and take a look at sharpness. It's about the same. The 28 might be slightly sharper here. Let's take a look at the other eye. But the 35 is sharper on this eye, it seems like. So I would say it's a tie there. The skin looks just as sharp on both. If you look at the hair out here, I mean, you get very, very sharp subject focus. And then if we zoom out to the background again, even though both are shot at f2.8, the bokeh is creamier on the 35 because you're at 35 millimeters. Both very sharp, both are usable, so I'd call this one a tie. So this next shot is just of some nature. This one was done at f6.3. ISO, as you can see, is 250. Let's look at the center. Just looking at that in particular, the grass. The 35 looks sharper to me here. We'll see if that maintains throughout. So let's take a look at the upper left corner. Yeah, 28 looks a little softer than the 35 to me. Take a look at the right corner. Interesting. Same story here. The 35 is sharper. That's strange. Let's see. Lower right-hand corner. Again, 35 is sharper. Lower left-hand corner, I'd have to give that to the 35 as well. You notice it quite significantly here with this bark mulch. So from a distance, if you're not pixel peeping, both images are great. It's decently sharp. I'm sure if you put this 28mm image up against the kit lens, it's gonna blow it away. But in this comparison, the 35 is sharper in all corners and in the center. This next shot is of a lake. So this is kind of low light. The settings on these 1/50, f6.3 on both, ISO 100. Let's take a look at center sharpness. Okay, there is quite a bit of difference here. So you can see the two people on jet skis. Well, you can clearly see them with the 35. On the 28, they are soft, fuzzy. This home is nice and crisp here. It's a bit soft on the 28, as is the home up on top here. So kind of an interesting result. Let's take a look at the right side. You can see even the tree line is nice and crisp on the 35. It's a bit soft on the 28. So that is unexpected for sure. Left side, same story, a bit soft. If you're not zooming in, both of these pictures look great. Looking at the water, even the 35 is sharper all the way back. So pretty interesting result. Even the grass here, I would have to definitely give this win to the 35mm. Here's another portrait, this time my wife's standing in front of the lake. Both of these done at actually wide open, so f2 on the 28 and f1.8 on the 35. So you can see that the 35 does bring in slightly more light, not a ton, not a lot of difference between these two, but the 1.8 is slightly brighter than the 2. So if we zoom in, Sharpness, I think, is a draw here. I think both images are nice and crisp. Yep. That is a tie, I think. Background is creamier on the 35, as you would expect, and as we've seen throughout this test. All right, and this is the last shot. And what's interesting about this one is there's a bit of difference in color. First of all, you'll notice that the 35mm is a little bit brighter. It's done at f1.8 versus f2, so both shot wide open. What I wanted to see is if we could get some color fringing with her arms against a bright background. And zooming in at right here on this bracelet, you can see that there is indeed color fringing. Both lenses suffer from it in this case. So you see this kind of greenish tint that is color fringing here. It's a little more blurry on the 35, but you definitely see it as well. If you look at center sharpness or subject sharpness, it's I'd say it's a tie. Maybe slightly in the 28mm's favor, but not by much. But what's interesting is both of these lenses suffer from the same color fringing, chromatic aberration. So you can see the outside of the elbow here. So wide open, you notice this. When you stop down the lenses, that's less of an issue. But again, you won't really notice this unless you are zooming in and really pixel peeping. So now let's move on to video. I'm gonna play a clip of my wife walking towards me and I am walking backwards. So here we go. And here is same clip, same distance with the Sony 35 and Optical Steadyshot. So as you can see, the Optical Steadyshot doesn't eliminate all of the shakiness, but it does help with the smaller shakiness. Here's another example of that. So this is me just handheld taking a shot of some trees with some houses in the background. This is the Sony 28mm. Pay attention to the edges. And now switching over to the Sony 35. There is some movement, but it is definitely noticeably more stable because of that OSS. So this comparison was educational for myself as well. Honestly, deep down, I did want the Sony 28mm to win. I wanted it to be sharper because, well, my 35 is, not in the best cosmetic shape. It still works wonderfully, but it's pretty dinged up and scratched up, and it might be time to buy a new 35mm. So I thought maybe, hey, 28 will work. I'll just sell the 35 and keep the 28. But this comparison really proved to me once again that the 35mm is one of the best lenses for the Sony E-mount and why it still is my favorite. I know that I keep saying that in these past couple of videos. I'm not paid by Sony. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I don't get paid to tell you that the Sony 35 is an amazing lens. It just is. I mean, it's come down to it. It really is sharp. It's really good. Very usable at 35mm. The Sony 28 in the comparison did a great job. I think it came the closest that any other lens has come as far as dethroning the Sony 35. But at the end of the day, this is still my recommendation. This is still the lens to get. Now realize the Sony 28mm is a full frame lens, so it probably will perform better on a full frame camera. It should be sharper in theory. The 35mm will not fit on a full frame camera, or if it does, you'll just get massive vignetting and it won't be usable. So both of these lenses are great. If you have a full frame Sony camera, the 28 is amazing, get it. But if you are still using a crop sensor A6000, A5100, A6500, the 35mm lens is really the one that I would suggest that you check out. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found it useful and learned something. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for all the likes and all the support. Stay tuned for more. I will post links to both of these lenses down below to Amazon if you guys are interested in checking those out. Check down below. And that is it. So thank you again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.